And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for June 9th, 2020. I'm Commissioner John Hutchings, the Chair of the Board. We also have Vice Chair Commissioner Ty Menser. We have we have County Manager Ramiro Chavez, and I'm going to guess Assistant County Manager. I don't know if she's on the screen or not. We have a host of people that some I can see and some I cannot see. And so you want to introduce them, please, Romero?
Yeah, what I can see is Dr. Diana Yu, the Director of Public Health and Social Services, Shelley Slaughter, our County Treasurer, Mr. Jeff Gadman, our Director of Emergency Services, Kurt Harding. I have our Operations Managers in CPED, Jeremy Davis. I have our Prosecuting Attorney, Elizabeth Petrich. And I believe we have our Facility Supervisor, Michael Crow. And just joined us, our IT Director, Dennis Osorio.
Great, thank you. And I don't know if anybody's joining us on the phone, but if you want to join via the conference call, the number is 360-252-9020, and your PIN number is 1234, and that's also on the county's website. So with that, we're going to jump right into COVID-19 update. And I'm going to start with, I'm going to turn to Shelley Slaughter, our PHSS Director, and see where she wants to take us.
Thank you, Commissioner Hutchings. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to just start by giving you the data overview, and then I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Diana Yu, our Health Officer, to give you more details about our recent congregate care setting outbreaks. So in Washington State, as of yesterday, there have been 24,041 positive cases of COVID-19, 1,116 deaths. Here in Thurston County, we stand today at 173 confirmed COVID-19 cases. Unfortunately, 2 deaths. We did have another death that Dr. Yu shared with you last week. Not last week, that just recently happened, and she may be providing more details momentarily. 26 have been hospitalized in the course of their illness. Currently, 4 are hospitalized that we are aware of, Thurston County residents in our local hospitals. 143 are considered recovering or no longer under public health supervision. They've been released from isolation and quarantine. We do not know yet what the long-term health impacts will be of those who have had COVID-19. There have been 2 congregate care setting outbreaks. Dr. Yu will share more about. Our testing reached to date, not our rate, the total number of tests, 10,288 tests since the beginning of our Thurston County outbreak. We have been in response for 125 days as of today. Our testing rate is 2% positive. However, in the last week, due to an increase in new cases and long-term care facility outbreaks, that rate is 2.7% positivity. So we'd like to see that go down. For those that are interested, in the past 14 days, we have had 42 cases. Our target, before we need to have conversations with the Secretary of Health to reconsider how our public health.
Shelley, hold on please a minute. Whoever's signing as Thurston County, please mute yourself. Thank you. Go ahead, Shelley.
Thank you, sir. As I was saying, 42 cases in the last 14-day period is what we have had. 74 is what our threshold is. So we are well within that and currently working on preparing our phase 3 application. And with that, I'll answer any questions you have before passing it over to Dr. Yu.
Yeah, please just repeat what you said. 74 is our threshold, and where are we currently?
42 cases in the last 14 days.
Oh, great, thank you. Dr. Yu, you have the floor, ma'am. Dr. Yu, frozen in time.
Dr. Yu? Can you hear us?
I think we lost connection with Dr. Yu.
Yeah, we have. So when she signs out and signs back in, perhaps, or when she gets that rectified, do you have anything further to add? Are there any questions, Ty, that you have of Shelley?
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, doctor. You're muted, ma'am.
So we,
Yes.
okay, can you hear me now? Okay, I had to leave and come back. So we have, as you're aware, long-term care outbreak in 2 different facilities. Just going to give you an update. Last week, I told you that we had in the larger long-term care facility, which served both assisted living and independent living clients. They had at that time 10 staff members and 9 residents that tested positive. No, I'm sorry, there were 11 staff members and 8 residents test positive. And then in the other facility, we had the 1 staff member who also worked in the bigger facility, and a resident test positive. So as of last week, we had 21 people that were involved in the outbreak. As of yesterday, over the last week, we had a couple more folks. So we now have a total of 13 staff members from the larger facility that tested positive, and a total of 10 residents at the facility that are diagnosed with COVID. And one of those residents passed away on Saturday. In the smaller long-term care facility, we have an additional staff person that worked there that also tested positive. So, and then contacts of the staff that were in the facility, we've had a number of household or significant, close contacts. There were 5 of them that have tested positive. So these are household contacts of the staff folks. Interesting. So altogether, we have 30 people that we have identified that are related to this outbreak. One of the patient that was in the smaller long-term care facility did pass away. The death was not, the doctor did not feel that the death was related to COVID. It was, so that is not counted as one of our COVID-related deaths. It was a person that was in the process of in hospice. And so of these 30 individuals, there have been 6 that have been in the hospital at one time. 4 were residents and 2 were staff and or their family member. And there is there are currently, Shelley mentioned, there are currently 4 people who remain hospitalized. 1 was somebody who's been there before. And 3 are the residents from the long-term care. Yesterday, we went back to the larger long-term care facility to do repeat testing to see if there were more individuals that have been exposed and were incubating or coming down. So they have been monitored daily. And as soon as they started having symptoms, they were retested. And yesterday we went in to retest everybody that had not been retested to see if there may be a few that are not yet symptomatic. Yesterday would have been 14 days after their last exposure. So we did about close to 200 tests yesterday, and did that in about 4 hours, and we will have the results in another day or two. That was thanks to facility staff that transported it for us. We should be able to get those results in another 36 hours. In the meanwhile, we're continuing to monitor every. Have to remind folks because a lot of folks are very feel not as worried because we have increased numbers, but there is a nursing home outbreak. But the reality is, 18 of the 30 that are related to the outbreak are actually out in the community. They're not residents of the nursing home. However, all of these people, the persons who are positive for COVID, as well as their household, are all under isolation and quarantine. And we are touching base with them daily and making sure that everything is still going okay and supporting them if they need. I'm going to open it up for questions if you have any.
Yeah, Doctor, we are eligible, Thurston County is eligible as of June 17, which is a week from tomorrow, to apply to enter into phase 3.
Yes,
And
sir.
I understand we are currently working on the application, gathering information, but the application is not going to be even considered until the 17th when we submit. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so far, in your estimation, are we at this point today on the 9th, a week early? Are we still on track to achieve that?
I feel very strongly that for the most important part of the move into phase 3 is our public health system's ability to contain and control transmission. We definitely do need the help of our community, the more people keep their physical distance, the more that they wear face coverings when they're out in public, when they cannot be physically apart, the better. It is the COVID threat continues to be here. If I look at and kind of take the cases related to the long-term care outbreak, we are still at about the same level of cases as we have been all along, a few here, a few there. What that means to me is that the cases continue to be in our community. So even though we have entered into phase 2 and we might well move to move into phase 3 next week, it the COVID problem continues to be here. It is not gone. And people need to remember that. They don't need to be afraid, but they need to be careful. They need to take the precautions that are reasonable that they can do to prevent transmission. And definitely, if people start feeling sick, the earlier they go in to be tested, the faster we'll know. Early on, we did not have the testing capacity. We do now. Early on, we were discouraging people from being tested because we didn't have all the stuff that we needed. We do now. So if people are starting to get sick, they need to go get tested. They know somebody that's sick and they've been around them, and they start not feeling well, they need to go get tested. The drive-through clinic is still open to the public and there's no charge for that. They still do require that you have symptoms, but it's any symptom. It's not a very strict, you have to have a cough and you have to be dying before you can go there. No. If you have headache, fever, what else? Body aches. There's a whole laundry list. A lot of non-specific symptoms, sore throat, cough. go in and be tested. So it's very important. I I feel pretty strongly that we have the capacity to control the. We do need the cooperation of everybody.
And just to reiterate, doctor, you said there's no test for that no fee for that drive-through testing?
That is correct.
Good, I want people to hear that through the audio. Good, thank you.
And Commissioner, later on your agenda, I have more information related to the application and the proposed schedule as to how the county could probably submit an application on June 17th.
Perfect.
That is
Commissioner Romero, were you still talking? No, okay. Commissioner Menser, do you have a question of Dr. Diana Yu?
Doctor, one thing I read, I think it was last night, was that there was some new information from World Health Organization suggesting that that people that are
Symptomatic.
asymptomatic are probably less able to transmit it as readily as we were worried about. People that are symptomatic are absolutely as infectious or contagious as we feared. But I guess if that's true, then to me it suggested that, just to keep, it's kind of good news in a way, because you can really bear down on it's difficult for a normal person who's asymptomatic to feel that sense of urgency, but we really need to bear down on people with symptoms, ourselves monitoring, addressing that, because it seems like that's, from what they're saying, that's kind of where the problem lies. Did you see that information?
I did see that, and I also I've seen a lot of articles, research, and I follow social media a lot. There's a lot of information out there, and even the official information changes.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, the flip flop of, don't wear a mask because it doesn't do anything for you, it doesn't protect you, to now, please wear a mask because it protects others. So it's a very hard concept for people to understand. Why are you flipping around? Why are you talking about asymptomatic people infecting others, and now you're saying they don't? And the thing is that the knowledge is evolving. We still have to recognize that this is a relatively new disease, and there's a lot more studies. And out of an abundance of caution, when you're in public health, I may end up being like, the crying wolf person, but my charge is to protect everybody. And if there's a question, I end up being more on the conservative side, because, is it impossible for a person who is not symptomatic to transmit COVID? I don't think I can say that. Is it very likely? Well, now they're saying no. But is it possible? Yes, it is possible. Is it the most likely? Definitely a person who's symptomatic will cause more infection. And we have seen that, even in our outbreak right now, somebody who's more symptomatic has a lot more people that they end up infecting. So, but things do change. I still believe that using a face covering is helpful, because sometimes you have symptoms, they may not be related to COVID, but if you have allergies, and you're coughing and sneezing, it still has the same effect, even if you are not symptomatic from COVID. If you happen to have COVID, that would still transmit. Sorry, long answer.
Yeah.
My coffee yet?
Gary, you have any questions?
Yes. By any chance, what you're referring to, is that because the viral load is less in an asymptomatic person than it is with a symptom type individual? Is that?
Well, I think that the reason they are less contagious is because they don't have symptoms. So they are less likely to be coughing and sneezing.
Okay.
And, the viral load varies when the virus enters your body and sets up housekeeping and multiplies in your body, making you sicker, there is a higher viral load versus when it first enters, like the pre-symptomatic. So it's called pre-symptomatic they're not asymptomatic, but it's just a day or two before they have symptoms. That is the time that the virus is really doubling, tripling, quadrupling. So they would be contagious, and we do know that people are contagious for a day or two before they start having the full-blown symptoms. So they're not really there. We don't call them asymptomatic. We call them pre-symptomatic. But in essence, they're the same. They don't have symptoms, but they could still give it to somebody else. Because that's what we see, and it varies so much. The incubation from when you're exposed to the disease to when you come down with it can be anywhere from 2 to 14 days. So some people get sick like right away, and some it takes 10, 11, 12 days before they start getting sick. And we've seen that with the long-term care outbreak.
As far as the possibility of opening up, one of the requirements is plenty of PPE, personal protective equipment. Have we covered that? Are we in good shape in that regard?
I think we are. You can double check with
With
Chief
Kurt?
Kurt, but I think we do have enough PPE. The hospitals have assured us. The long-term care facilities have gotten their PPE directly from the state. Kurt, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say we're in much better shape with PPE. We're now starting to fill all 4 tiers with PPE, and we're going outside of all 4 tiers. Now, we're getting sufficient PPE, and also we're seeing supply chains catching up with those healthcare providers. So we're in fairly good shape with PPE. My other update is that the state is sending out to all the counties, all the local jurisdictions, masks, cloth masks to distribute out to the public. And there's criteria with that. Not everybody in the public is going to qualify. You have to be 200% below the poverty level, I believe. There's some different areas in there, but we're getting ready to set up a plan to push that out here in the next week or two also for the public who can't afford or aren't able to obtain cloth masks themselves. So I think we're in fairly good shape right now.
Doctor, are you going to be here for this discussion that the county manager talked about the opening process? Will you be here
Yes.
for that? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Doctor, we had a child or a young one that was tested positive last week, I believe.
Mm-hmm. It was a household contact.
I'm sorry?
It was a child in a household where one or two of the parents had COVID.
That was my question then. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we do identify quite a few household contacts, but not everybody, and we're also identifying people who are not symptomatic, who tested positive because they're going in for surgery. Or a few workplaces have been testing their employees, and we've had a few of those as well. But we've also had random people who have become symptomatic and came in, be tested, and they're positive, and they don't know where they got it from. So.
Okay. Thank you. Shelley, anything further? And I'll look to Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Management. Do you have anything further to add, Kurt?
Nothing further outside of the PPE discussion.
Good, thank you. Then we're going to move on to homeless strategies with Keely Marino. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Keely.
Good to see you. Keely Marino with Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. So I have actually quite a list of things that I'd love to update you on today, so I'll try to be quick. So if I speak too fast, I apologize in advance. Number one, and related to COVID response, as you are aware, that in March we were awarded upwards of $1 million from the Department of Commerce for the Emergency Housing Grant. We used those about $650,000 immediately went out to agencies to address hygiene, social distancing, sheltering in place, and increasing capacity of our current shelters to go 24/7. Most of those funds are set to kind of dwindle out by the end of June. However, the Treasury Act dollars we are using to continue those contracts to ensure that those hygiene services, sheltering in place, and 24/7 shelter operations that are socially distant will remain functioning. So that is really excellent news. 2828 Martin Way, that extra shelter that we were able to stand up in 1 week, that's serving currently 23 of the most vulnerable folks in our communities, all people over the age of 60 and with underlying health conditions, where there have been 0 outbreaks or anyone testing positive or presenting as positive, COVID positive, has been a really significant positive impact on our homeless crisis response system. And so with those extra dollars, we'll be able to extend that shelter onward, at least until October. On that note, in terms of hygiene, Kim Condrat with St. Mike's, as you well know, because you wrote that wonderful letter thanking St. Mike's and Sacred Heart, were able to not only extend their cold weather shelter this year, but also increase hygiene services at Sacred Heart Church. On June 5th, those hygiene services ended due to just a lack of volunteers, and it was just time to move forward. The City of Olympia has been in negotiations with the YMCA in downtown at the Plum Street YMCA about opening their showers for hygiene for folks in the downtown corridor. Through the Department of Treasury Act and with our current contract with the City of Olympia for hygiene services, the county will be extending their contract in order to fund those really important, valuable hygiene services at the YMCA. And hopefully that will be, the contract will be signed and ready to go sometime this week, if not early next week. So there will be shuttles again going around to the various encampments in the community to bring them down to the YMCA for showers. So that's very exciting. We thank the YMCA for their willingness to help. The Commerce, as you know, and I mentioned last week, has also introduced the emergency or shelter program funding. So that was funding that was talked about at the end of January, beginning of February, or somewhere in there, about how we can extend our capacity for shelters in our system. And we did a lot of work on that preliminarily, and then COVID hit and we shifted our focus for COVID response. So last week we gathered comments from the City of Olympia and with our staff to give Commerce some feedback and ask some questions, clarifying questions about those dollars that will be coming into our community for expanded shelter capacity. We are still working closely with the City of Olympia to talk about what that might look like. One of the allowable projects for extended beds is safe parking program. So we're looking at what does that mean, which relates directly to Ensign Road. So I know that Ensign Road has been in many people's view, what's going on with regards to the RVs and other vehicles parking along Ensign Road. I myself drove past Ensign Road this morning on the way to Lilly, the public health building, and I counted about 22 to 25 vehicles, most of which were RVs. Teal Russell, who is the new Olympia homeless coordinator, reached out to the Outreach Workers League last night via email to let us know that last week she went and talked directly to each member of everyone that she could find that are currently parked alongside Ensign Road to let them know that they absolutely must leave the sidewalks clear in order to make it safe for people to walk along those sidewalks. So she did let them know that on Monday today that she would be coming around with 72-hour notices for them to clean up the sidewalks. So as I was driving into the Department of Health this morning, I did see Teal Russell out there. So that is not an eviction notice. It is a notice that they have 72 hours to clean up the sidewalks, everything on the sidewalks. They have been using the dumpster. That dumpster was full when I drove by as well. So they are making an effort, but it's still, the sidewalks are still encumbered. So the City of Olympia is working with those folks to make sure that they get cleaned up. We are also, we've been meeting in the last week. We have one more meeting tomorrow with agencies one-on-one to talk about what they've been experiencing after COVID, how they've responded, what are surprise benefits of social distancing, et cetera. And then how do they see the future for their agency and moving forward with continued social distancing practices, particularly with our shelters. And so we had excellent conversations with those individual agencies, and we're collecting that information, and we'll be creating a summary. We're bringing the preliminary summary to the Housing Action Team tomorrow to kind of talk through the key highlighted points of all those conversations, and have a conversation, a bigger conversation with the members of the HAT, and what they think about that summary, and do a little bit of problem solving, as well as bringing it to the Hazardous Weather Task Force, because a lot of the questions and a lot of the concern is, how do we move forward with hazardous weather? What do we purchase? What does it mean to fund hazardous weather shelters this year? Does that mean increased capacity? Does that mean finding a single adult provider somewhere? What does that mean? With social distancing, as you all know, the shelters were having to decrease their overall capacity, and that was during cold weather shelter. So we have concerns about what are we going to do with potentially more people experiencing homelessness once the eviction moratoriums are lifted. So we don't have answers. We have more questions than we have anything else, but we are actively working with our community to find solutions, as well as make recommendations to the Health and Human Services Commission next month. Finally, all of staff members from 4 jurisdictions, Tumwater, Lacey, Olympia, and the county met last week to finalize a draft for the interlocal agreement for the Regional Housing Council. We feel like we have a pretty good draft, and we're excited to bring it forth and present it to the Regional Housing Council on the 18th. And that is a lot, but that is my report.
I filled up a page. Thank you. Any questions of Keely, commissioners? Oh, wow. How about from Romero?
Yeah, Keely, do you have an update on the hygiene trailer related to the grant that we received from law?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you for prompting me. I did have it down on my list. So we are moving forward with having a meeting actually on Thursday with First Christian, Interfaith Works, City of Olympia's planning department, as well as Teal Russell and Mike Otterer, who is the runs Olympic Construction, who is constructing the hygiene trailer. At this point, I think we're just a matter of weeks away from having it, I almost said inserted, but that's not what I mean. Having it delivered to First Christian, and we're working out the operational side of how it will actually operate in their parking lot. So we'll have a lot more information on the technical side, like how the electrical is going to work, how the plumbing is going in, as of Thursday.
Yeah, good question. Anything else for Keely? Wow, you skated. Keely, thank you very much.
Thank you,
All
Keely.
right, thank you.
And now we're going to the June 9th, this afternoon's BoCC meeting has been canceled. So we're going to get through that in a minute, the things that need to be taken care of today. But we're going to preview the week of June 16th item
Let me see.
for next week. And number 1 is authorize the sale of tax title property.
Yeah, commissioners, before you move on, I'd like to hear the pleasure of the board, would like to cancel next week's Board of County Commissioners. You have made those decisions on a weekly basis?
Seatmates, I'm going to presume yes, but I'll turn to my seatmates for questions or comments regarding canceling next week's BoCC meeting for the public.
Which is Tuesday the 16th.
Right. Okay, then no objections.
Well, wait, I'm waiting for Ty. I thought he was gonna say something.
No, I think we have to. It's possible that it seems like if we apply next week, it's possible the week after that we could have a board meeting, but I think we'd have to cancel next week's.
Gary?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so it's canceled then, Romero.
Thank you, sir.
Now we're going to review next week's items.
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. The first item on your agenda for you to take, or consider taking an action next week is the private negotiation of a tax title property. Under RCW 3635-120, 3635-130, 3635-150, and Thurston County Code 2.105 defines the authority as to how we need to surplus any tax title. Tax title comes to the county when individuals who owns those properties don't pay property taxes, so they become delinquent properties. After a certain period of time, the county take custody of those properties. It is important to say the county does not own those tax title properties. The county takes custody to the benefit of the taxpayers in Thurston County. A couple of years ago, the board passed a resolution authorizing the county treasurer, Mr. Jeff Cadman, to go ahead and be proactively surplus all those tax title properties in the county because we have many. The proposal before you is this property located in 1307 Bowman Avenue Northwest in Olympia. That's within the city boundaries of Olympia. It's just up the hill from the West Bay Drive, just to give you an indication. This property has been in tax title since 1997. It went to foreclosure action. We received no bidders. And the dimensions of this property attached in your packet is a little bit indication of the size of this property. Is 10 by 32 feet. Is just about 0.007 acres. So the proposal before you is to entertain a private negotiation. And the fee is $493.30. That is the actual assessed value of the property. If you add all the fees associated with this transaction, the total cost is $756.80. And again, this is I like to applaud the county treasurer, his staff, because they have been extremely proactive as to how they take the tax title properties and at least bring them into the tax roll in a way. I believe he's available to answer any questions related to this particular action.
Jeff, Treasurer Gadman, do you have anything to add?
No, it's just, this is one of those little tiny 320 square feet. I think there's people that have living rooms bigger than that. And the guy, quite honestly, has been using it as part of his backyard just because it's at the back of his property. So this sale really makes sense.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions of the treasurer?
I guess I would just maybe ask the treasurer if he could explain so the public knows that there's been plenty of opportunity for other people to buy this should they want to come buy it, bought it in the past, over the last 23 years, I guess. I mean, if they wanted to acquire this piece of property, it was possible for some unaffiliated person to buy it if they wanted to, by paying off all the back taxes and everything that goes with it. Is that right?
Yeah, any member of the public, and they don't even have to be a citizen of our county or a citizen of our state, even anybody could buy it. This property is challenged on the market because it is 10 feet across somebody's backyard, and it lies on an unopened city right-of-way. It's a city right-of-way that will probably never be opened. So access is an issue. I just don't think there's really not an attractive nature to this property other than to the adjoining lot owner.
I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Commissioner Gadman, for pushing this, because each one of these properties that you handled and put back, you've actually put them back on the tax rolls, and in the long run, they might be small properties, but as you build this sale portfolio up, it adds up to money that goes back into the tax base. So thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you for saying that too, because you're right. Most of these are very low value, but as we add them to the tax rolls, little bites become big helpings, and pretty soon we're talking real money.
Commissioner Menser?
Good.
Jeff, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
And item number 2.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners, for your consideration. The Office of Public Defense has a petty cash account, and the amount is $200. And the purpose of that account they used to have is to provide bus passes to those individuals who need it while they conduct services with the Office of Public Defense. Since all the fares are now free, so there is not a need to have this petty cash account. So the proposal before you is to consider a resolution abolishing this petty cash account in the Office of Public Defense.
All right. Any questions of Romero? I don't. All right, thank you, Romero. Number 3.
For your consideration, Commissioners, this is a request from Public Works for you to consider awarding a contract. On June 3rd, 2020, the department received 6 bids to construct the Case Road Fish Barrier Removal Project. The bids was in response to the advertisement that we placed on the Olympian, the Seattle Daily Journal of Commerce, as well as the Builders Exchange of Washington. The low bid was from Granite Construction Company, which is $605,588. Out of that, there will be $500,000 coming from the federal government, and the remaining funds will be from the real estate excise tax. And that was part of the program you established a couple of years ago using REAT 2. And also I'd like to emphasize that one of the objectives of the board by assigning real estate excise tax to this program is to be able to leverage outside funding and grants to construct this very important program. And this is a good example as to how staff has been proactive in doing so. The project removes an existing 30-inch diameter culvert, which is a fish barrier, and replaces with a 16-foot wide structure steel plate culvert. This project will open access to more than half a mile of fish habitat, which has been restricted for the last 50 years. And again, the department is asking the board to consider awarding the contract to Granite Construction for a total of $666,146, which includes a 10% contingency.
That's 30 inches into a 16-foot wide culvert and a half a mile access for habitat.
That is correct, sir.
This is a dollar well spent of the REAP funding.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions of this item to Romero or staff? Good. Let's get it done. Number 4.
Similar to the previous item, and this is a fish barrier project as well. On May 28, 2020, the department received a total of 8 bids for the construction of Elbow Lake Creek culvert, which is located at the Piesner Road location. The low bid that we received was from Rodarte Construction Incorporated. The low bid was $478,672.50. This is going to be partially funded with the Salmon Recovery Funding Grant for $80,000, which is coming from the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office, which is the RCO. And you took an action to access those grants, I believe, a couple of weeks ago. The remaining funds will come from the real estate excise tax to the same program they established a couple of years ago. This project removes an existing culvert identified as a fish barrier and replaces it with a new 60-foot-long prefabricated bridge. As you may recall, we went out to bid to secure prefabricated bridges early in the year, and that action that you approved really saved close to 3 months of construction, which this is going to be very helpful this year. The bridge, this project will open a half a mile upstream of the Nisqually River and will open access to more than 2.5 miles of stream habitat related to on this location. And again, the department is asking the board to consider awarding the contract to Rodarte Construction for a total of $526,539, which includes a 10% contingency.
Beautiful. Any questions of Romero for yet another move forward? Go ahead, Gary.
I would just maybe ask the county manager, because some people listening might not be aware of how we come to the conclusion of which culverts and such to replace. Just so they know, it's kind of a cooperative effort with all parties. Could you just make mention of that?
Yeah, and in fact, the Department of Public Works has assessed that we have many barriers in the county, and that are going through a technical priority list, which they emphasize as to how much habitat we can open by those investments. And also the priority array has been coordinated with the stakeholders, including some of the local tribes, and we get their feedback, and that will help us to assess what would be the best priority. Also, the third leg of that stool in terms of the priority is what available funding outside of the county is available to fund those particular projects, which each location and each funding source needs to meet a specific criteria. So it's a very comprehensive selection process, and I do believe the department has been successful in meeting the needs of this program.
All right, thank you for that. That takes us to item number 5.
Thank you, commissioners. Let me take you back to October 3rd, 2018. That's when we came to the facilities and we realized that one of the electrical cables broke loose. That was one of an electrical vault located in front of the courthouse. As a result of that, as you may recall, had to close county offices because we were out of power for 2 days. And the board instituted an emergency so we can do an emergency repair to the vault. Not only that we needed to come back and do a permanent repair on that particular system. As you may recall, in 2019, between August and November, there was a lot of work in the parking lot, which made the permanent fix of this particular electrical vault. And this particular action for you is for you to consider closing the contract so we can release all the retainers to the contractor. The contractor has met all the specifications of the contract. We have gone through the punch list, everything has been met, and the staff is recommending for you to consider formally closing this contract.
All right, and what was the cost of that?
I think Michael Crow is here. I can't remember the actual number. I don't know if Michael, can you unmute yourself?
The cost of the repair, yeah. Michael?
There we go.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have that number in front of me. I believe it was right at $300,000.
Okay.
But we'll confirm that number next week when you review this item again.
Yep.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners?
No.
No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael. Number 6.
For your consideration, you may recall a couple of weeks ago, you passed a resolution accepting money from the federal government through the state of Washington related to the Habitat Conservation Plan. So the Thurston County is developing the Prairie Habitat Conservation Plan to secure a Section 10 incidental take permit under the Endangered Species Act for a period of 30 years. This incidental take permit will provide certainty for permit reviews, streamline the permitting process, and enable Thurston County to maintain control of local land use rules and regulations while contributing to the prairie preservation in Thurston County. Using the funds we have secured under Phase 4 in Section C6 grant, that's the federal government, the community planning staff is seeking the board to approve issuing a request for proposals to secure the services of a consultant to study and provide findings on the economic effects resulting from the proposed multi-species programmatic habitat conservation plan in Thurston County. This is one of the key reports that we need to add and to complement what we call the HCP as goes through the approval process with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And again, this is asking the board to consider issuing a request for proposals to secure the services to conduct a financial study that will supplement the HCP.
All right, questions? Go ahead, Ty.
And I believe Christina Chapeau is
Chris Chapeau?
Chapeau is online to answer any questions.
Hang on, Ty. Chris, do you have anything to add to Ramiro? What he had suggested or gave us?
No, and this is funded through the grant. It is to study the economic effects of the HCP, and it's important for our next steps, which is the SEPA-NEPA analysis and for outreach.
My question is this something that we're being asked to do by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or we've decided that this would be a good addition to the plan, or where is this coming from?
It's a little of both. So the SEPA-NEPA requires some financial information to be analyzed. This will give us the basis for a lot of that analysis. It is also going to provide us information about how the HCP will affect the economy, will affect the property owners, which have been a number of questions that have come up through the years of developing the HCP.
So is this, I mean, my next question is about kind of opportunity cost. Is the grant funding we just authorized last week enough to cover all these different things that we need, or is choosing to do this going to come at the expense of not being able to do something else that's on our list?
No, when I applied for the grant, this was one of the pieces that I asked for funding.
Okay.
Commissioner Edwards?
Is the Economic Development Council going to be involved in this, or maybe be a bidder on this?
I would assume they could be a bidder. It's going, with your permission, will go out to the public for proposals for us to review.
I guess I'd like to at least maybe have the county manager make sure that they're notified, because I think, I know we don't try to pick winners and losers on private business, but I think the EDC is very instrumental in the overall economic activities in our community. And I think they ought to be at least aware of it. I'm not sure they want to bid on it, but I'd like to have them have input into it.
Yeah, I believe the input certainly, but I will probably have to walk a fine line in reaching out to any particular potential bidder to apply for a proposal, because then I have to reach out to many others. So I believe that if the Economic Development Council has the technical expertise to provide the services, certainly I believe they will be put in the position to apply. But if not, I believe there is, as you stated, is a great resource moving along and hopefully in the development of this plan, we can reach out to them.
Maybe just one quick thing. Maybe we could have the SEPA and the NEPA acronyms explained to the public, because I'm sure they probably don't know what that is.
Yes,
So-
so
Go ahead.
the SEPA is the State Environmental Protection Act, and NEPA is the federal counterpart, which is the National Environmental Protection Act.
And Chris, are those, the SEPA and the NEPA going to be done concurrently?
Yes, sir.
Good, because each one takes about a year.
Yes, sir.
So concurrently, that's what we want. Good, thank you. And are we still on par? I believe we are, for a June 30 deadline.
Yes, sir. We are working hard to make sure we make that deadline.
Will you explain what the deadline is, please?
Sure. So June 30th, staff was asked to have the revised draft of the Habitat Conservation Plan ready for the Board of County Commissioners to see and review.
So we can get it to Fish and Wildlife so they can get it to their solicitor and get on with the doggone process.
Correct.
Yes, great, thank you.
I
Any other
guess-
questions?
Yeah, maybe following up on that, is this gonna be the third time we've presented this to U.S. Fish and Wildlife?
This will be the fourth.
Fourth time,
The fourth draft.
the fourth
Fourth
draft, to
Fourth
see
draft.
if they would be willing to accept this to move forward, is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
And I would add the fourth and final.
we hope it's the fourth and final.
I'm optimistic, but okay.
So am I.
Any other questions of Chris or Romero on this topic? Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Now we're getting to Jeremy, the Historic Commission Heritage Grant Program, number 7.
Yeah, Commissioners, back in 2019, you signed grants related to the Heritage Grant Program. And one of the requirements was all those grants to fulfill all the requirements of the grant by December 2019. In December, 2 grantees requested an extension because they were not able to deliver the intended outcome of the grant by December 2019, which the board approved the extension to June 2020. As a result of the COVID-19, that puts a little hamper as to how they're gonna be able to deliver those. And so they are requesting for you to consider another extension. So the 2 grantees, they received money was the Northwest Institute for Leadership and Change, which the intended outcome of that was documented the history of Blacks in Thurston County who came here between 1950 and 1975. The next grantee was the YMCA, and it was related to the transfer of YCWA, Olympia Historic Documents, photographs, scrapbooks, public relation materials, artifacts, plaques, awards, and more to the Washington State Historical Society, specifically to the Washington Women's Consortium. And again, this request is for you to consider extending this deadline to December 2020 for those 2 grantees being able to deliver the requirements of the grant. And Jeremy is here to answer any questions.
And Jeremy, have you anything to add?
No, sir. I believe that is a true, correct summary.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, I'm good too. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you, Romero.
Thank you, Jeremy.
And number 8, when you get your notes taken.
This related to a previous item, and with a contract with the Thurston County, the Washington State Developmental Disabilities Administration, which you extend the contract of the funding. So this is the follow-up item, where this item, the Thurston Mason County's Developmental Disabilities Professional Services Agreement to extend from July 1st, 2020 through June 30, 2021. Some of the programs included on this particular agreement is for supported employment, high school transition, value-based payment, and community inclusion services for adults within developmental disabilities, both in Thurston and Mason counties. A little more detail on that. High school transition services provide individuals with developmental disabilities ages 20 to 21 who are enrolled in their final year in high school with vocational assessment and discovery, on-the-job training, on-the-job development, with the goal of paid employment upon graduation. Community inclusion services promote individualized skill development, independent living, and community integration for persons with developmental disabilities to learn how to actively and independently engage on their local community. And again, this is a request for you to extend those programs, and I believe Mark Moffett is here to answer any questions or add additional information you may need.
Hi, Mark. Good morning. Do you have anything to add to Romero's presentation?
Good morning, Commissioners. No, this is similar to other contracts in the past. The only difference is the value-based payment, which is brand new. It's a pilot program that only a few counties in the state are going to pilot. So what that does is we get to work with high school transition students a year prior to where we work with them now to hopefully get them a job when they exit high school. And it's a 2-year pilot project, and we'll see what the results are when we get done with it.
Oh, wonderful. Questions from the commissioners?
I think it's in good hands.
Yeah, seeing none. Thank you, Mark, very much. Thank you.
You bet. I wish I could bring you something more controversial, but maybe.
Well, wait till we're done with all this other stuff going on.
All right, thank you, Commissioners.
Be careful what we wish for, Mark.
All right. And then the number 9 is the renewal of Microsoft Enterprise Agreement.
Yeah, this is the renewal of the licenses. We have a Microsoft, Thurston County uses Microsoft applications to support the core aspects of IT aspects of county business. The current products that we use include various components of Office 365, which includes Outlook, Word, Excel, Access, SharePoint, Visio, Project, SharePoint System Configuration, Manager, SQL Server, and the Microsoft Windows Server. This is a yearly license. They will need to pay to Microsoft in order for us to continue to operate using those applications. The license is $339,730.72, which includes taxes per year. This renewal, it will take us for the next 3-year term. This is already included in the allocated budget for 2020. And Dennis Osorio, the IT director, is available to answer any questions.
Before we get to Dennis, I'm looking at the interagency agreement between State of Washington, DES, and Thurston County. This is different than the Microsoft?
Yes.
Okay.
That's capital A.
Yeah,
That's that one, okay.
Capital A.
I'm just looking to see if there was an attachment of a draft agreement. I don't see one, but it'll all be reviewed by the legal staff, I would imagine. Go ahead, Dennis, if you have anything to add, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Romero, Dennis Osorio, IT Director. We do have the contract and it is being reviewed. We just got it stamped today, so we will attach it for next week from our legal folks. We use the state contract to get state contract pricing, so that's what you're probably seeing. That's attached right there is we're using Washington state contract to get the same state pricing. In addition to that, I think Romero covered it pretty much. Microsoft is our core system for all of our applications, all from our desktop all the way through the entire stack to our servers. There was an increase in costs in general across Microsoft licensing board, ranged between 4% and 6% based on what product. We did go and try to see if we could pitch a discount to Microsoft and see if we can get any kind of discount due to the pandemic going on. That was brought up their chain and was denied. But we did do some due diligence there to see if there was any other any way we can get this number lowered.
Okay. Very good. Any questions or comments, commissioners?
Yes.
Go ahead, Gary.
Maybe this is for Robin or the county manager, but as we pay out over the next 3 years, this $1 million basically, is this dedicated to other funds throughout the county so that, for an example, general fund is always what we're struggling with. So is this paying like a third general fund and a third other stuff, 2/3? What is it? Have we got it broken down so that we're not paying any more out of one fund than we absolutely have to?
Yes. Yes, this is allocated. I do think that it is roughly half general fund, but we could check that and get back to you. But it is allocated, and the allocation method, I think, is based on number of computers.
Okay, that was just my concern. I don't know that you need to get back to me. I just want to make sure we're not paying for this.
Yeah, that's part of the internal rates, and in fact, there is a briefing coming up in front of the board. They will dive a little more in detail how the internal rates will be distributed for the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you.
Anything, Ty?
Nope.
Nope, me either. Dennis, thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
That takes us to proclamations and awards, and I don't see any.
No, they're none.
None, okay. And advisory boards and commissions
No updates on that, commissioners.
and PIO check-in. And I imagine Megan is at the EOC, and we've got Brian here in the house.
Yeah, Brian will report here in 10, 9, 8.
Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, Romero. Brian Dominique, Public Information Officer for Thurston County. Just a follow-up from our last week's meeting. The agenda setting meetings and our public hearings are going to be playing on the TC Media channel, including the one we're doing now. So we took care of that.
Good.
And then Megan, our Public Information Supervisor, she's continuing to support public health in our community with COVID-19 response, and that's where she's at now. And then for census, our census response for Thurston County is 69.5%. This is higher than our 2010 response rate, but our goal is 100% response. So for anyone who hasn't responded to the census, they're encouraged to go to my2020census.gov and fill out their census there. And at this point, every resident in the state is urged to answer the census, whether they received an invitation or not. But they can call 844-330-2020 just to make sure that their residence is included in the census database. And then the Chehalis Western Trail undercrossing near Talcott Ridge, if I'm saying that correctly, will open today. The undercrossing connects two major sections of the trail near BNSF railroad tracks. People can find information about this project on the Public Works Projects webpage. And we sent out our 8th issue of the Friday 5 newsletter last Friday. To date, we have 441 subscribers who received this via email. We also post the current newsletter to our county news page, Facebook, and Twitter. Anyone who wants to receive the newsletter can subscribe on our county news page, which is accessible from thurstoncountylaw.gov. And our monthly newsletter has continued to go to county employees through the COVID-19 pandemic, with our 6th issue of 2020 being released last week. I want to take this opportunity to thank the commissioners and their executive aides for their contributions to the newsletter. I received some feedback from staff over the last couple of months about how they enjoy the newsletter and find the information useful. So thank you. And
very good.
Finally, this was brought to my attention, so I just want to say it here. Congratulations to Thurston County Senior Defense Attorney Larry Jefferson on being named the recipient of the Thurston County Bar Association's 2020 Daniel Bigelow Award. The Bigelow Award recognizes outstanding achievement in professional and community service.
Wow, that's great. Good job, Larry.
And pending any questions, that's all I have.
Any questions for Brian, Gary?
No, sir.
Hi.
I thought Megan was going to be back here on Tuesdays.
She was. Someone had a health emergency, so that's required her to stay on board over there a little bit longer.
A couple of comments. The Bigelow Award, as a former member of the local bar association, is a really big deal. It's kind of a lifetime achievement type of situation. It's not necessarily given every year if there aren't adequate. So it's given, it's given when the local legal community feels that there's a worthy recipient. So that's a great honor for Larry. Also wanted to say that we just got an email in, since Brian mentioned the census, that TRPC just checked in and gave us some information updating the commissioners. The response has been pretty good across the community, but we're still lagging a little bit in South County. About 50% down there, and we'd like to get that up. And the Chehalis tribe has agreed to run some billboards near the Great Wolf Lodge to help spread awareness in South County free of charge. So I really appreciate the Chehalis tribe's cooperation with us to get our census numbers as high as possible. It's really important for resources allocated to our community, which we're going to just need more than ever as we move forward in the next couple of years.
Is that it?
That's it.
And I'll just add that it only takes 10 minutes to answer 10 questions on the census, and you're done. So please get your voice heard and be counted. Make it count. I would also add it was nice to see TCM, Thurston Community Media, see Marta in the house this morning. It's been several months, or a few months anyway. So nice to get that back on board. It seems like things are just slowly resuming to a normalcy, and that is really cool news about Larry. And so, Brian, thank you very much for all your endeavors.
Commissioner Edwards has a question.
Okay.
We ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. Reference the grand opening, well, the opening of the track. Are we going to have any kind of a grand opening activity there, or at a later date, or at a later date we are?
We'll work on something.
I know Commissioner Wolf was quite active in working on trying to get this accomplished. I thought it'd be nice to invite her down.
What are you referring to, Commissioner? I don't.
For the trail underneath the tracks.
Okay, the track. Okay. Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah,
I will report next week because I'll be running through that tunnel this weekend.
Okay, and plan around the rain. All right, thank you. And thank you, Brian. Legislative update.
I don't have any updates for you. It's still unknown as to when the governor's going to call for a special session. So we'll keep you posted when that comes up. In the meantime, we'll continue to work with Deborah Manguia as to how we can introduce some items mainly related to providing a little more flexibility to existing county revenues.
All right, thank you. So before we take a break, any questions or comments from the commissioners? No, we're going to be taking a 15-minute break. It's 10:15. We'll be back at 10:30, and we'll get into our hearing decisions pending and the legislative piece, and then commissioner items. So come back, 15 minutes. Thank you very much. We're in recess.
Romero.
And welcome back to the Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for June 9th, 2020. And we're at the point in our agenda this morning that we're getting into all the different decisions that we need to make, and then we'll transfer into our commissioner items. So number one on the list is a coronavirus relief fund contract.
Yeah, thank you. Before we get into this item, Commissioner, you see me that I'm wearing a mask.
Yep.
The governor issued an order. All of us need to wear a mask if we are in the center room with other co-workers. In this case, I'm here with Commissioner Edwards. And this brought to my attention via an email from a county employee. So I really appreciate you highlighting this particular matter. So here we're leading by example. So that's the reason why I'm wearing a mask before you.
Wonderful. And I'm looking, and Commissioner Edwards has one.
Certainly, and it's got American flags all over it.
Great.
Matches my tie.
Commissioner Mensah?
I better say that even though it looks like I'm in the boardroom, I'm not in the boardroom. My virtual background is a picture of the boardroom, but I'm in my office by myself with the door shut. So.
Yep. Thank you.
Commissioners. Hang on. You know I have my mask. I'm in my office by myself, and so I'm not wearing a mask. But that again, it's role modeling. It's leading by example. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Romero.
Yeah.
And thank the employee again. Thank you.
Thank you, the employee, to bring it to our attention. I appreciate it. And I just want to make sure that my voice is projecting correctly. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Also, to add to that, I am telecommuting, which we are strongly encouraging all our employees to do.
Thank you,
Good.
Robin.
Thank you, Robin.
So,
all right, number one.
With that in mind, Commissioners, you have not reviewed this item yet. So, but this is an item that you have been tracking, perhaps. This is related to the Coronavirus Relief Fund, CRF. As you know, the state awarded the county $15,724,500, and that is for us to use this money for a specific COVID-related emergencies. And there is a lot of information related to that. I can go in more in detail if you like me to, and explain the process that perhaps we're going to go through, and for you to consider assigning those dollars to many operations inside and outside the county. But this particular item is the county needs to enter into a contract with the Department of Commerce to secure the $15,724,500. This particular item is for you to authorize the county manager to sign the contract and subsequent A19 certifications for reimbursement. What is that? What that means is every time they would submit a reimbursement request to the Department of Commerce, we need to certify via this form A19. So through this action, you authorize me to sign the contract with the Department of Commerce, as well as signing any subsequent A19 certifications for reimbursement.
Okay, very good. Any questions of the commissioners? No? Okay. Those are a motion.
Yes, sir. I move to approve the Coronavirus Relief Fund contract with the Department of Commerce for $15,724,500 and for the term of March 1st, 2020 through October 31st, 2020, and authorize the county manager to sign the contract and subsequent A19 certifications for reimbursement.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve the Coronavirus Relief Fund contract. Any further discussion?
No, sir.
All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Number two, Thurston County Procurement Policy Update.
Yeah, this item is not ready for you to take an action today, but certainly I'll bring this item next week because Elizabeth is looking through the details of this particular proposal. But this will be a good opportunity for Robin to walk you through what the proposed updates to the current Thurston County procurement policy. And this is just related to some of the changes to allow us more flexibility to respond to this emergency in a larger context. So
So this will be moved to next week?
yeah, you will see next week.
Okay, go ahead, Robin.
So we are asking for very limited changes to the procurement policy at this time. We are aligning the thresholds for bids and RFPs to federal and state laws that have been updated since we last updated our policy. The second thing we're doing is removing a reference to the MRSC roster so that when you need to do informal research of quotes, we can get 3 quotes from any reliable source, not only from the MRSC roster. So we're removing that limitation. And the third item that we're doing is our current policy says that any IT purchase under $2,500 can be made without the approval of IT. But what we found is that really it doesn't matter how much you're spending on IT, it all needs to be approved or on the standards list. So that is the third change that we're proposing. All of this at this time will make it easier for us to move quickly to use the COVID-19 funding and respond to the current crisis. That's why we're bringing it to you now. And if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to see if I can answer them.
All right. Gary or Ty, any questions of Robin regarding this procurement policy?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to ask, are we going to vote on this today?
No, next week.
This will be next week as well? Okay.
Can you, Robin, I think I caught the second and third changes. I think I missed the first one.
The first and probably the most important part is we are aligning the dollar thresholds for bidding and RFP with state and federal laws. The state and federal laws are higher than our current policy. And when we're audited, we're held to the most strict policy. So we'd like to align those with the state and federal laws.
What do you mean by bidding thresholds?
So right now, under current county policy, we have to go out for bids, a formal bid or an RFP, if the dollar amount of the contract will be $50,000 or more. For public works, I think it's either state or federal law is 250,000 and the other one is 350,000. So it's a significant difference.
Gotcha.
So Robin, why was there a move afoot to remove the MRSC limitation?
So we would like to be able to continue to use the MRSC roster, but we don't want to be limited to that roster. We maintain a small works roster at the county. MRSC maintains a roster that we subscribe to. We might look to state contracts for quotes. The MRSC roster is not always as broad as we would look for, or doesn't have the types of vendors that we need to call. A recent example is our search for electric sanitizer dispensers. The people on the rosters that our current policy restricted us to didn't have that type of machine. So we had to document why we were going off the roster. We'd like to just go with what we need rather than having to document that the initial resource isn't what we need.
Yeah, it gives us as much resource and a room that we need.
Yeah, it provides some flexibility.
And MRSC is the Multiple Research Services Center?
Municipal
Research Council.
Okay. Very good. So that will come back to us next week then?
That is correct, after we have the opportunity for our prosecuting attorney to review the details of this policy.
Got it, thank you. Number 3, the server cooling unit.
You reviewed this item last week, Commissioners, and this is for your consideration to award the contract for $113,348.25 to Capital Heating and Cooling Incorporated to change the cooling systems in the electrical controls on the server room that we have in the county. I believe you had questions related to this item last week. Brian was able to explain, and also Dennis provided, you had some questions. So I think Dennis can provide you additional information as, because I think Commissioner Minzer asked the question as to how we secure the technical elements to determine this is the right thing to do, if I may paraphrase your question, Commissioner. Dennis?
Hello again, Dennis Osorio, IT Director. And I spoke with Michael Crow, who's also on the line here. So what we did is we provided all of the technical equipment in there. And Michael Crow was able to take all that equipment and work with the vendor. And they essentially come up with the equation of how much heat all that equipment puts off. And then that helps us decide what the requirements are for AC cooling.
Okay, any questions of Dennis or Michael?
Did that answer the question about what the methodology was?
I saw the email that had gone through, I think from Michael.
Okay.
So I'm satisfied with what we're doing here.
Okay.
Michael, do you have anything to add, sir?
Eric, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is just that the one that we're replacing has failed, and the new system that we're putting in gives us some redundancy and also is more efficient.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Edwards, any questions?
No, I talked to the staff last week about it, and I'm satisfied. They really need it, sounds like to me.
Yeah, very good. All right, is there a motion?
I move to award a contract not to exceed $113,348.25, which includes the base bid, Washington State sales tax, and up to 10% contingency for the server cooling unit, project number 25901, to Capital Heating and Cooling Incorporated of Lacey, Washington, and authorize the Assistant County Manager to sign the contract and any change orders due to unforeseen conditions only, not for changes in scope that do not exceed the 10% contingency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to bid award for project 25901 server cooling unit. Any further discussion? Nope. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Number 4, setting a public hearing for the HUD annual action plan for 2020.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, Commissioners. As a matter of background, Thurston County receives funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for Home Investment Partnership Program, HOME, and the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is also known as CDBG, to provide a variety of activities to serve low-income households and individuals. This funding is consistent with the consolidated plan. The county approved a consolidated plan that take us between 2018 and 2022. This particular public hearing is for you to take public testimony on the implementation plan for 2020. And that includes some of the CDBG projects that the city of Lacey has already identified. As you may recall, the CDBG funding is allocated on a rotation basis between the city of Lacey, the city of Tumwater, and what we call the county and the south cities in the county. In 2019 was the turn of the county with the south county cities. And again, this is for you to consider setting a public hearing for July 14, 2020, for you to receive public testimony on the annual action plan of 2020. And I believe Tom Webster is available to answer any additional questions you may have.
Tom, before we get to questions, do you have anything to add to Romero's presentation?
No, he did a very good job. The HUD requirement does require a 30-day public comment period, so we will be posting a plan on June 11th later this week. Jacinda and I are working on it as we speak, just finalizing it. So it will be available to the public on June 11th, and then we have at least a 30-day public comment period requirement, which is why the public hearing is set for July 14th.
Good, thank you for that, and thank you, Jacinda, for your work in this arena. Commissioner Edwards, any questions?
No, but I do have a quick question for Tom, just real quick. Are you gonna be around as we go into our commissioner items, Tom?
I can be if you would like me to be.
I mean, there's one issue coming up about Western State Hospital with the mental health component of that. Could you be around at some point?
Certainly.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much of a help I can be, but I'm certainly I'll do my best.
I don't see that in here, Gary. Where is that?
No, it's not. We received a email about that through our county server, I believe, in regard for putting in public impact input about the changes the governor's office is doing to Western State. And it's gonna tie in with what Tom does, but I didn't want to take it out of order. I just wanted to find out if he was gonna be here to comment.
Okay, that is something you'll bring up under commissioner items?
Yes, that was the intent.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Commissioner Messer, any questions of Tom?
No.
Or on this issue? Okay, neither do I. Thank you, Jacinda, for hanging out with us. Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
And there's a motion.
Yes, I move to set a public hearing for Tuesday, July 14th, 2020 at 3 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard, to receive public comments and review the fiscal year 2020 U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Annual Action Plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to set a public hearing for the 2020 HUD Annual Action Plan for Tuesday, July 14, 2020 at 3 p.m. Any further discussion? No, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Thank you. Number 5 is the approval of the voucher list. I know I've gone through it, and I don't know, I'm sure my seatmates, I'm gonna presume they have. Do you have any questions on the voucher list?
I have a lot of questions, but there's just not enough time here to address them all. So I'll talk to staff on the side. Thank you.
So
You have a lot of questions on the voucher list?
No, I just had one question. Nope, I'm good. Not for now. I just, we don't have enough time for most everything we do is all I'm saying.
All right, but regarding the voucher list, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Commissioner Menzer.
Move to approve the voucher list for the week of May 25th, 2020 for a combined amount of $2,171,932.95.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the voucher list for May 25th, 2020. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Thank you. And a reminder, there's a virtual public hearing this afternoon, June 9th, 2020 at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Romero, yes.
That is
3
correct,
p.m.
sir.
Regarding the renewal of the interim emergency housing ordinance number 15792. That's a public hearing this afternoon at 3 p.m.
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. If I may, for the UN public, I will encourage them to get into our county website. We will have a Zoom meeting connection to whomever wants to participate on a Zoom meeting. Also, we're gonna have a conference call available for those members of the public who do not have access via computer, that certainly can get access to via conference call. And that is a little bit different as to how we are conducting public hearings.
Got it. And that phone number, just in case you didn't get, you haven't gone to the website yet, is 360-252-9020. Enter 1234 as your PIN. So now we're moving into commissioner items, and the first one is hazard pay end date.
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. Last week, you had a robust conversation where the majority of the board agreed to continue given a hazard pay of 5% to sheriff deputies, correction officers, juvenile correction officers, as well as security officers here in the courthouse and some members of the coroner's office. In that
Yeah,
discussion,
we were at a stalemate.
in that discussion, I encourage the board to establish a certain date of this, since this is a temporary action that you are taking. And obviously, it was a different perspective between Commissioner Hutchins and Commissioner Edwards. So the reason that I'm bringing this back to you, to really encourage you to set an end date. And this is related to some potential aspects that we might be dealing with a bargaining contract that we have with all those units. Because if there is not an end date, it is not considered temporary, and we could be leading into something more of a long-term benefit that may jeopardize future contract negotiations, if that is the right statement. So the reason that I'm asking for you to consider this temporary action of hazard pay of 5% on a monthly basis. So, and that is probably my proposal for you today.
All right, so I will go back to, we decide on a weekly basis whether we're going to have open the BoCC room for committee meetings or not. We decide that on a weekly basis rather than several months out, because things can change and they're changing rapidly. So I will go back to what I was saying last week, and that was to do this on a month-to-month basis, but presumably on the 17th or 18th of this month, we will be moving into phase 3, and we'll see how that goes, and we'll see how we progress with the testing and the results of that. I just think it's reasonable and prudent to do this on a month-to-month basis. It only takes about a minute to do it, and that's where I am on a month-to-month basis. Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I guess maybe had we had more time for our discussion last week, I would agree with you, because I think the biggest thing going on here is the precedent that can be set. And because of that, I'm fine with going for the month by month.
Good, okay.
Okay, so I will
2 to 1.
that will take us to the end of June, and leading to that date, I will bring this item again for your consideration.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Now we're looking at the interagency agreement for Capital Lake Estuary. EIS.
Chair, could I address the chair quick?
Please.
This issue that I brought up with Western State and having Tom hang fire here for a little bit, is there any chance we could just squeeze this in for a second so I could pass this on to Tom? Because it seems like folks don't know about it, and then we could move on. Could I get it squeezed in? Just take a minute.
For discussion?
Yeah, just quick, I don't want Tom to be staying here for another hour unnecessarily.
And nor do I. Go ahead then.
Okay, I received communication from Lakewood, and it's about the modifications that are going to take place at Western State. I know in my other role as a lawman, Western State was an integral part of our activities with criminal defendants, and I'm sure with the courts as well. It's instrumental in how we do business. And I guess what I'd do is, if Tom had not received this communication, I just wanted to pass this on. If he could follow up on it, because he works in that arena, to keep us advised of what impact it might have on county government. I'll let it go at that, and I would guess the county manager can communicate with Tom to watch this. Is that okay with everybody?
Commissioner Edwards or Minister, any comment?
No, I know Tom is our housing person, and this is a mental health hospital issue. Is Tom the right person to look into this for us? I don't know what the issue is. I didn't see the letter.
Well, it's a Western State issue, and I don't know the answer to that either, Commissioner, but I wanted to make sure I thought he would have been notified, but he hasn't been notified about it either, so.
So, let me look at.
And I haven't found the email.
You got it on the email?
I said, I haven't found it, no.
Oh, well, okay, I'm kind of curious, how come I got it, you guys didn't get it, so that's why I'm bringing it up.
So let me look at the details of that email and determine what will be the right person to respond to.
Okay.
Will that work?
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So Tom and Jacinda, you're just excused if you wish. Thank you. Now we got the Capitol Lake Estuary EIS.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe our county treasurer, Mr. Jeff Gadman, has been very patient, waiting for this item to come up to your attention. And this give you a little bit of history related to this item before you. And this is, again, informational. I will bring this item to you next week if that is the direction the board wants to take. And it's been some years, the Department of Enterprise Services at the state has been leading an effort to determine what will be the way as to how Capitol Lake should be managed. And there's many different alternatives as to how, what is estuary, a combination, or remain as it is. The board has been engaged on this process for quite some time, some years. Earlier Commissioner Hutchins participated in a committee, the executive committee, and I believe Jeff Gadman, our treasurer, participates on the financial committee of this effort as well. So one of the main key steps in this process is to develop an environmental impact statement, also known as EIS, that will determine, the impacts, assess all the environmental components, social components, economic components, financial elements, and determine what will be what I call the preferred action of this particular process. In the last couple of rounds of the legislative actions, they have secured funding to continue with this process, the EIS process. But in 2019, the allocation from the legislature came short as to what they needed to have to fund the EIS. In 2020, the legislature allocated additional funding with a little bit of a caveat. They perhaps needed to have somewhat of a $300,000 contribution from some of the key partners. And there's 5 jurisdictions of the key partners, is the City of Olympia, Thurston County, the Port of Olympia, Lot, and I believe, what is the other one, Jeff?
I'm sorry, we've got City of Tumwater, Lot, Port of Olympia.
And I think it's the tribe, right?
Squaxin Island.
Yes. Squaxin Island tribe, thank you.
Yes.
So that was a key commitment. You received a letter from the ES last year when they wanted to have somewhat of a commitment from the county, which the county signed a letter supporting this strategy. So here we are, and this is an agreement for us to fulfill our portion of the financial contribution to this effort, which is $60,000. You're going to be asking where that money is going to come from.
Yes, I am.
It is not coming from the general fund. It is coming from the surface water utility. And then, in fact, you review briefly the item as a budget amendment that you may be considering taking an action here in next week or so. So this agreement formalized the county's financial participation and with the state to continue with the process of the environmental impact statement, EIS. Questions?
Yes, questions? Gary?
Well, when you say questions, I guess I have comments more than questions.
Okay.
As we move forward with this, I think you've all heard me talk about this in the past, and that is that we evaluate the upper Deschutes. And the reason for evaluating the upper Deschutes is because throughout the Cascade Range, every river that flows into the Puget Sound, eventually flows into the Puget Sound, where the headwaters are owned by corporate timber interests, for the last 50 years, they've been putting thousands of tons of commercial fertilizer on the forest to enhance the growth on the trees that they're harvesting up there. And a portion of that fertilizer washes into each one of those rivers through their tributaries. And in our case, it comes down and goes into Capitol Lake. And so I think it's very important that we make sure we get all of the facts as we move into the public policy process. And the state wasn't willing to apparently fund that part of the EIS, is what my understanding was. So what I'm wondering about, what do we get for the 60,000? Are we going to get a complete analysis of fresh water that's flowing into the Deschutes from the upper area and hence into Capitol Lake? This is all done legally. Ecology issues a permit, DNR oversees it, and there's certain restrictions in place, buffers and such, but I don't believe it's monitored very close, and the general public has no idea that this is going on. When we had the governor's meeting about the orca situation in the Puget Sound last year, this was not even brought up. I was quite disappointed about that, but.
Well, you kind of answered your own question though,
Well,
Commissioner.
I want to make sure that we end up doing a proper analysis of the upper Deschutes.
And no, we're not. It's not going up to the headwaters way upstream, no.
Okay, well then I can't,
It's not doing that.
I can't support doing a halfway job for an analysis of the problem going into Capitol Lake.
Okay, Commissioner Menser?
I don't really have many questions. I've handled this as a board member for LOT, and LOT's one of the partners, so I'm familiar with the agreement. I've had multiple presentations on it. The water quality issue in Butt Inlet is really, really important to me, and this is we're asking the state to put a ton of money into our little piece of Washington, and it's an important piece, but they're asking for some buy-in from the local partners that this is important enough to us that the state should put its money at the expense of Spokane or Bellingham or Walla Walla or somewhere else, that it should dump millions of dollars into studying and working through a plan for our community. And this agreement represents a contribution from all of our local partners, including tribal and the municipalities and the LOT Clean Water Alliance. So I really want to contribute to this and see this process move forward.
And sitting on the Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary Executive Committee, the work continues, and this is another phase of that work. And there are people on 3 or 4 sides of this issue. There are about 3 or 4 sides to this issue, and it's still being discussed and studied and analyzed. And so considerable work has been done with all the other partners involved, to include the state. And even though Thurston County doesn't have a final say as to what is going to happen with Capitol Lake, I think it's important for us to be involved, not only the BoCC, but as a Board of Health. And this is what we're discussing now, was just the interlocal agreement to contribute $60,000 of millions for this project, for the environmental impact statement. And so I'm supportive of that as well, because it's just too important to the citizens of the county and to our economy as well. Treasurer Jeff Gadman.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of comments regarding this. First of all, very honored because, so my involvement on the funding and governance work group, y'all may have heard me express opinions when I'm in meetings before, and so I'm not shy there at this group. And because of comments that I made back in November, Thurston County was given the privilege of basically reviewing and refining the language in this agreement. None of the other partners got that. So what you're looking at is an agreement that has gone through the prosecutor's office. Rick Peters reviewed it. The other thing that I wanted to mention about with regards to this agreement is the state portion remains fully funded, and it's not, that funding is not in danger of going away.
Okay. Thank you for that input too about Rick Peters and our involvement in, at least in the review of this document. Any other questions?
Commissioner Edwards has a question.
Yes, sir.
I can see that we don't have enough leverage by whether or not we participate. I agree, we do need to participate. But I guess what I would do in lieu of them opposing the review of the upper Deschutes and out of the Cascades, what I would ask, would the board, would my seatmates be willing to sign on to a letter from the Board of County Commissioners here in Thurston County, addressed maybe to the governor and some of his sub-agencies, I don't know, DNR, ecology, whomever, to express at least our concern that we get all of the facts and that we don't have the abilities to do this study on our own, and it's gonna have a direct impact on the whole Puget Sound process, not just the South Puget Sound. And I think the time has come that we need to push this issue, because I can tell you, the enterprise services, I'm not gonna say they've got their head in the sand, but nobody wants to take this on as a major issue of water quality in the state of Washington. But
Romero, have we sent a letter, Romero?
we did. Yeah. We sent a letter to Enterprise Services asking that they analyze the upper portion of the Deschutes River.
We have sent that letter, and I have repeatedly at the meetings have stated the not only our intent, but how important it is to do the headwaters and way upstream. So it's been repeated several times, and the letter, and it's not going just to DES, but it's going to the consultants that are running this entire project for DES, and they've been reporting that information back. I don't know if it's getting to the governor, but it has been reported back to those policymakers at that level. Ty, you had your hand up.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to answer Commissioner Edwards' request. We asked last year, and I think in direct response to his concerns, that we get water quality testing up in the upper part. And we're going to have a briefing on that soon. And if that evidence shows that the water quality at that upper location is just as bad, if not worse, and it's not the dam, it's not the land use practices in the lower Deschutes, middle Deschutes, it's really something coming from up above Deschutes Falls Park, I will start beating the drum with him. Because I want to get to I'm not afraid to take on anybody, and I want to get to the root of what's, poisoning our water quality in Butt Inlet. But until I see that information, I don't have that baseline to know that that's, it sounds very plausible what Commissioner Edwards has been saying, and I've kept an open mind toward the concept, but I need to see some concrete evidence, and that's what I was hoping that water quality testing would tell us.
And I would not have beat that drum at the meetings if I didn't agree with that. And like I said a couple of minutes ago, the work is still continuing. This is about the agreement, but if those tests come back, we mentioned it last week, if those tests come back from public health about upstream, and it's icky stuff up there, which I have no doubt it is, then I would do the same thing. I will stomp up and down on the stage like Rumpelstiltskin and pitch a fit. But at this point, go ahead, Gary, because at this point, I just want to go ahead and get the EIS agreed to. But go ahead, Gary.
Okay, I'm on with the EIS contribution, our portion as well. But because we were able to develop this into a conversation of water quality, and Commissioner Menser said, yes, we're gonna have some information come back from our Board of Health. The problem is they're making a monthly sample up there where that isn't necessarily gonna give us the information that we need. And the reason I say that, we had the timber industry come down and explain to us their process. They told us all about how they follow the buffers and they follow the science and all that. And to me, it sounded very much like the tobacco industry when they were telling Congress how good this nicotine is for you. Okay. These folks are corporate folks that have every reason to take care of their shareholders. So now that we've been bringing this up, I just don't trust that we're gonna get adequate information. They know we're watching them. And so they're not gonna put their fertilizer product on when we're testing. And we're only doing it once a month. So I still think we need to address this and address it to the governor and see if we can't make some headway on water quality throughout the Puget Sound on this.
Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make clear what this particular agreement is that you're looking at today is not an agreement related to further funding of the EIS. This agreement is to support the work of the Funding and Governance Work Group and the consultants that we're working with to help us craft the eventual long-term plan.
It's all good. I agree. I'm glad we're doing that.
And this has not been.
I'm taking this opportunity to ask my seatmates if they would be interested in signing on with a letter. You'll be able to read the letter, see what it says, bringing attention to this particular issue, because I think we're killing the Puget Sound and damaging our water quality by not looking into this. And I don't see that we're making any headway. I've been harping on it for 3 years now.
I know. Has this been reviewed by legal yet, Romero?
Yes, it has been. And just a point of clarification to what Jeff stated, although that is not related to funding the EIS, but it's related to the EIS process. Because it's integral to all what is going on related to the environmental impact statement. Is that fair, Jeff?
That is absolutely fair. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. So
I'm in support of the EIS. However, to answer Commissioner Edwards' question, I am not opposed to sending a letter to the governor requesting the headwaters or be funded for further study up at the headwaters. But I knowing there's such competing interests, I don't hold much. Don't have much faith that that would go anywhere.
Well,
I'm not opposed to sending a letter.
Let me just give you a
You have a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, give you a selfish point of view, I guess, because I can tell you the corporate timber industry in this country is not very happy with me bringing this up. So I guess what I'm doing is asking my fellow seatmates to become targets as well as myself, maybe, with additional signatures addressing this issue to the governor as an official concern of the Board of County Commissioners from Thurston County, because we are concerned about the water quality in our state. And I just don't think I have actually talked to folks that are involved in the legislative arena, DNR. Jennifer Belcher was she held a position after she left the Senate involving overseeing DNR. She had no idea this went on. And I'm not saying they're doing anything under the table. I'm saying they're doing a practice that's been in place for more than 50 years now, and they're killing the environment. And we
So I'm not opposed to sending a letter.
You read, or will you send a letter, sign on with me, sir? Is that
But
what I'm
would it be,
hearing?
Commissioner, would it be the Board of County Commission or the Board of Health? Because we're talking about water quality as well.
Well, I'd like to do both. I think it's time we put some pressure
Commissioner
on
Menzer.
someone to pay attention to this problem.
Commissioner Menzer, where do you sit on that, sir?
I reserve decision until I see the data. I want to have something behind what we're saying. I mean, I don't believe what the corporate spokespeople are saying, and they're not going to necessarily believe what we're saying if we're just throwing back and forth speculation. If we have some hard data, and I'm going to show that there's a problem, then I'm happy to take that further step.
Well,
So Romero, when we talked about this last week, I think it was a week ago, might have been two, and Art Story told us, or maybe you refreshed our memory, that they're doing that testing. How long would it be before we had some type of a baseline results, knowing that we're looking at seasonal type testing?
Well,
It's been going for a year.
that is part of the upcoming briefing, Commissioner.
Okay, is that next week or is that this week?
The 17th.
Next Wednesday, okay. Good, so we'll find out more then. Hopefully we have results. So I'm willing to sign on, but I'm willing to put this off until subsequent to what we find out from Public Health.
okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Well, that was robust as well. Item number 3, regional airport proposal.
You may recall that back on April 29, 2020, the Washington State Department of Transportation provided you with a briefing related to a potential siting of a international airport somewhere in Thurston County, most likely on the south part of the county. You have on your attachment a copy of that presentation. I'm not going to go through the details of this presentation. I just want to make sure that you may remember they may be asking, or they did ask at that time, what will be the position of the county in terms of supporting the concept of siting a large airport somewhere in South Thurston County. I am not expecting you to say A or nay today, and this is just to bring you awareness that a decision point will be coming up your way maybe in the next couple of weeks. And again, the reason for me to bring this item to you is an attempt not to surprise you in 2 weeks when I may be asking you what is the position of the board related to this proposal.
All right, and this goes back quite some time when Romero and I went to the Port of Olympia and listened to this presentation, and it was very interesting. So seatmates, this is probably brand new to you. Do you have any comments, Ty?
Yeah, so the board did get this presentation. It says April 29th on the slides. I think that might have been the date. But I will say that I was kind of stunned by the presentation upon seeing the footprint of the Greenfield site located right smack in the middle of my district. So I proposed that TRPC, which is our regional council of elected representatives, get this presentation so I could get some input and some feedback from the community at large. And Mark Daly put that on the, reached out to this commission, got the same presentation, invited the Transportation Policy Board members to sit in, and that just happened last Friday. So I was very curious to hear what the reaction was. There wasn't a ton of discussion. I invited them. I said, please reach out to the commissioners and let us know what you think, because we're going to be making potentially a recommendation in July. There were 2 voices. There wasn't really any voice that seemed very excited about it. The mayor of Tumwater was on the line. He seemed pretty dead set opposed to it. He brought up some information that I thought I would share, that apparently this site and an idea has been around for a while. He said in the early 90s, this was extensively studied, and based on the wind patterns of that area, the planes have to come in on a north-south trajectory, basically flying right over the city of the capital and city of Olympia. There was, he described very significant community opposition to at that time. The representative of the PUD also spoke out with concerns, and there wasn't much other discussion. I expected to hear at least a couple of voices of excitement about the concept because of economic development considerations or otherwise, but nobody really had a lot to say other than the Maritime Water and the PUD rep. So just wanted to share that. We may get some more input because I really, in my comments at the end of the meeting, I said, please do not hesitate to reach out once you've chewed on this and thought about it. You know, I'm kind of concerned. I want to hear some voices of the community on either side if we're going to be making any kind of recommendation next month. But that's where it sits from TRPC.
Thank you for refreshing my memory. When Romero and I heard this presentation, it was well before April. So when we had ours in April, it would like refresh that again. So this is like the third time now. So they blend together. And what they're proposing would take place, putting in like a regional airport or airport like this size would be, it's like a 30-year project. So it wouldn't even go until, or not even feasible until 2050 is I think their time frame. But yeah, this is very much in its infantile stage. And I haven't heard anything pro or con from the community either. So thanks for bringing it to the TRPC. Commissioner Edwards, anything?
Yes, I think that if we were to even think about commenting at this early stage, I can't help but think the public would think we were trying to snooker them, because here we are going through a pandemic in which everybody is tied up in their own little situation or their own major situation, I guess. And I just think it's irresponsible to even talk about trying to have the public involvement at this point in time. Let's wait. There's no hurry on this. We could wait until next year, for that matter, if we're going to be dealing with this thing all the way up into the fall. We've got some major issues to deal with. I certainly don't think this is one of the top of the agenda setting issues that we ought to be dealing with at this point in time.
I agree with that. Okay, anything else, Romero? Go ahead.
So in relation to the timing, I just want to be respectful to the expectations that the Department of Transportation set before you on the April 29, 2020. Certainly, no action is part of your decision-making process. And that is something that you can also exercise. But maybe, I think Jenica is online. Maybe I can ask her again if she can reach out to DOT and see what the actual hard line is for the board to take a position on this proposal. It's still July 2020, or that can be delayed based on the emergency.
Okay. Are you gonna jump in, Ty?
Well, I just want to, I asked that question at TRPC. I said, are the timelines for what you need from the board extended because of COVID-19? And they said no. If a community, they want to hear that there's some community interest, and if you want to be on a list of 6 final spots for consideration, we need to let them know. And you know, I don't know that I want to be or I don't want to be at this point, but I don't know that we do have the option. If we're interested in being on the list, I don't know that we do have the option to just do nothing. I think we have to let them know that we have community interest in this, and by July is what I heard.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption, Jenica. Go ahead.
I think the information that I had originally gotten was that July was the hard deadline, but I can reach out to them and confirm one way or another.
Yeah, and even if there was an extension, I wouldn't think it'd be considerable enough to get us all the way through a pandemic till we're back again, because that's going to take, that'll take a year or two. So you give us that information, but that's just another month away.
Will do.
Okay, and did you have anything else to add about the project or proposal? You killed your mic. Go ahead.
Nothing additional at this time. I haven't received any additional communication from the WashDOT representatives. And so as I reach out to them now, I'll see if there is any information that has come in light of the COVID crisis.
Okay, thank you. Gary?
I guess, again, I just can't believe, right in the middle of this pandemic, we're gonna expect to come up with a stand that we're taking either yay or nay with no community input yet. Like Mayor Commit said, this came up 25 years ago. So it isn't like it's a brand new item. And I don't believe for a minute that we're locked in on a specific deadline that's gonna get us there or not. And basically with no community input. I mean, I haven't seen any articles in the paper about it or anything that really would alert the public as to what is going on. So I just think it's kind of crazy to think that we're going to be in a situation where we have to make this decision next month.
Go ahead, Jenica.
In our original meeting with the representatives, we had asked when they were going to do a community engagement phase, and they had said it would be after the July deadline. And so it does sound like there's a plan on their end to engage with the community.
I agree. I would like to have community input before I decide whether we're
right.
or not.
That's my position. Community input early on, not after the fact.
If the majority think this is the greatest idea since strawberry shortcake, okay. But if they say no, then I'm not interested in signing on. And I won't have WASDOT or anybody else put the hard word or deadline on me. You've got to decide before we move forward to public comment. I don't want to do that. That's on the wrong side of it for me. Anything else, commissioners?
No.
Okay. We'll hear back from you next week or sometime in the future.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you,
at some point I will bring this item back up again, and then I will ask the board to take a position.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenica. Now we're gonna move, I'm talking slowly so Ramiro catches up to the Chehalis Basin Watershed Plan.
Yeah, no action on this, commissioners. This is just to bring to your attention that you may be exercising your approval later in the year related to the Chehalis Basin Watershed Plan. And this is really one of the plans related to the first decision, as you may recall. Last year you approved the Nisqually Basin Plan. And each of those basins had a different dates in which those could be implemented and approved. So, and again, this is just to bring awareness to you that this is coming up. I know that Commissioner Messer sits on this particular group. He'll provide additional perspective if he'd like. It also will ask probably at some point before you make obviously a decision, we can organize a formal briefing for you to understand the nuances and the details of this proposed plan that might be coming before you, maybe late summer, early fall.
Okay. Anything, Ty?
Yeah, I just wanted Ramiro to ask the board because when this will come to us, late August and September, we'll need to approve. One of the things the Basin Partnership has done is create a set of slides, which you can either have your staff walk through or they'll provide a staff support if you want sort of a guided presentation, briefing. And so that's just available. So I want to make sure that I let you guys know. Of course, I'm kind of well versed in it, but I certainly want the board to have the information it needs before it has to exercise its vote. This is similar to the Nisqually plan that we approved early in 2019. It's the Chehalis version. The deadline there is, we need to have it to ecology, I think, in 1st of November. So they've got to get it through a bunch of jurisdictions. So that's the timeline that we're walking backward from.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anything, Gary?
No, sir.
So I will, maybe I can coordinate with Thomasina, Commissioner Messer, to see if we can organize a briefing.
Sure.
Good, thank you. Public demonstrations update.
Yeah, I'd just like to bring an update, and this is related to the demonstrations that we have seen and experienced across the country, perhaps across the world, across the state, and here in our cities, as a relation to the tragic death of George Floyd on the hands of Minneapolis police officers. Don't want to elaborate too much on that. I think it's all over the news. I'd just like to give you a report on the support the Sheriff's Office has provided particularly to the City of Olympia in response to the demonstrations that we have seen in the last week plus. And I just give you a little bit by the numbers. And the support which the City of Olympia, at their request, reached out to the Thurston County Sheriff's Office to provide support, as well as in coordination with the State Patrol, I believe. And I believe also the City of Tumwater Police Department has provided support as well. So since Saturday, May 30th, through the latest Friday, June 5th, every day, the Sheriff's Office has supported between 17 and 35 individuals from the Sheriff's Office providing the support to the City of Olympia particularly. They have spent in the call-outs 165 hours. They have extended shifts, 3 hours on the shifts. They have spent overtime call-outs close to 550 hours. They have managed to go over staff shortages of 29 hours, and they have also spent standby hours of 144 hours. Over this period of time, they have made 12 arrests. Those arrests has been made in process by the Olympia Police Department. And again, I don't believe the Sheriff's Office has done those arrests directly. That is in terms of my report. There is a larger report that I believe the Undersheriff has submitted to the Sheriff for review. As soon as that is completed, I will make this report available to you with additional details. My last comment to this, I'd just like to thank the Sheriff's Office for to support the City of Olympia Police Department. And this might be also part of your budget decisions, because that has incurred a lot of overtime for the Sheriff's Office in the last couple of weeks.
Romero, have we had any injuries reported from sheriff deputies or corrections?
The last that I've heard, I believe 3 law enforcement officers were sustained injuries, and I believe out of those, 1 sheriff deputy. That's the last that I've heard.
Okay. Where I'd like to take this, excuse me, is we are the county leadership. We're not only the Board of County Commissioners, but we're also the Board of Health, the county's Board of Health, and we're role models. And we hopefully set the tone, or at least take a stand, rather than be ostriches. And in my head, I can be supportive of law enforcement and still condemn racism and condemn institutional bias and institutional racism. And so when I've read a lot of the public statements that were put out by political figures and by the cities and the sheriff and Dr. John Weisman, the State Department of Health Secretary. I read his statement condemning institutional bias, I think how they word it. And so when I was talking with Judge Price this morning, our Superior Court presiding judge, he talked about the letter that was put out by the Washington State Supreme Court. And he sent me their statement, and I have not read it yet. He sent it to me just a little bit ago. But it actually has 9 signatures. All 9 justices have signed off on it, taking a position. Again, I haven't read it yet. But I believe it's important that the board send a letter or put out some type of a statement. And this statement is not so much directed to, in my head, again, our audience is our county employees, about our policies, our procedures, our directives, about our mission statement and our value statement, and what we don't tolerate. And if there's a review needed, call for a review. But that would be, in my head, that's the audience I would be writing it to, is our 1,100 plus employees. But it stands as a letter, of course, to the community as well. So whether we do something as a board or individually, this is open for discussion now. So anybody has their hand up that would like to weigh in? Commissioner Menser.
Thank you. I know there was a concept of a board statement, and I'm willing to work with my seatmates on that. Makes sense. I haven't really had any opportunity to weigh in on any of this, so I take this quick opportunity here, buried in a Zoom meeting late on a Tuesday morning. I'd like to thank Thurston County Sheriff's Office for working collaboratively with our cities to provide support and keep peace over the last week as a starting point. But I also want to take the opportunity to say that I share the outrage of the protesters about the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis and the systemic racism that underlies it. The question for me is what can be done at our level of government here at Thurston County? I think it's worth pointing out that in our county, unlike the cities, law enforcement policies and procedures are not under the Board of County Commissioners' direct control. Whereas cities hire and fire their police chief and set policy, we have an elected sheriff to do that. He's directly accountable to the people. And I urge the community to reach out to him and have a conversation with any concerns. I'm sure the sheriff will actively engage with the community and listen and respond appropriately about those issues. I know the governor yesterday proposed some statewide measures. Sounded like a good place to start from my perspective. But what is under our board's direct control is a wide range of other departments and operations of our local government. And I'm aware that we are not immune from institutional racism, and I would like Thurston County to take action. We don't have a high percentage of ethnic minorities in Thurston County compared to other places, so kind of makes it easy to brush these tough issues aside sometimes, say that's something that's happening somewhere else, not here. But that's not accurate or an appropriate response to this. This issue, racism is something that plagues our communities from north to south, east to west, rural to urban. So, you know, a few things that I'm thinking about as a starting point. I met in March with leadership of the YWCA, a group that does specialized work on sexism and racism. I was presented by them with a program proposal for the Intercultural Foundation's Community Institute. They were intending actually to present this proposal to the full board in August in connection with the proclamation we have planned on equal pay. And I've been holding this on my desk, this brochure about it, because I intended to ask the board, but it's all the more urgent at this point. This program goes through your organization with a comprehensive assessment of your organizational mindset about cultural differences, development of workshop trainings for your organization, and with the goal of institutionalizing equity and trying to do some really difficult things to address these issues. And I think the board should commit to this program so we can get this difficult process started. Second thing is I've learned about Thurston County Code, Chapter 2, 114, provides for a council on cultural diversity and human rights. I know this has been in place before. It's been disbanded. It's set up very specifically in the Thurston County Code with 23 members, cross-section of the community. It may be time to reform that. Third, from my perspective, and I'm talking about the Board of County Commissioners and what I feel my responsibility is, when we allocate resources, which we do, we need to be thoughtful and mindful of the facts in this country of mass incarceration. The United States has 4.4% of the world's population and 22% of the world's prison population. This has primarily been driven by policies that started in the late 70s and early 80s around racial profiling and the war on drugs. We have blacks incarcerated in this country. I looked all these stats up at 6 times the rate of whites. 12% of the population is black, 34% of the country's prison population. In Thurston County, it's 3 to 4% of the population and 12% of the jail population. So, you know, this reality that we have to confront, and this isn't something that this board did or our law enforcement did. These are policies that really originated about 30 to 40 years ago. We were incarcerating at about a 1,400% rate from the mid 70s. Crime rate has not increased by 1,400%. And this reality is part of the reason that I've been resistant to things like, for example, authorizing the flex unit for the jail. Even though it's an important part of the jail that was never built, and it was part of the original design, and it would help us get the female defendants off the floor, it's been really hard for me to feel good about moving forward with that expansion in light of how this country over-incarcerates. And this is not on the backs of law enforcement. We over-incarcerate by statute. We need to advocate for legislative change to some of our laws. In the past legislative session, there was a bail jumping reform statute that was a great first step. We were creating felons and ruining people's lives because they didn't have transportation and couldn't make it to court. We stopped that. That's good. I don't believe that every single drug possession case of any quantity, first offense, needs to be a felony. So there are lots of things we can do to combat over-incarceration. I've been told that the Washington State Legislature right now has a shortfall of legislators who prioritize criminal justice issues and don't have a lot of expertise. We can change that by letting our legislators know that these issues are a priority for us and supporting candidates who have a background in criminal justice issues. Finally, I want to say that we need to build up the supporting systems that will reduce the impossible breadth of responsibility we place on the backs of our law enforcement. We expect our officers to be substance use disorder experts, mental health experts, counselors, social workers, animal control workers. It is not tenable, and it's an approach that's cheap, but it's not working. And we know that resources are precious, so I've been proposing and will continue to propose that we hire a criminal justice program manager to evaluate what we're spending, where we're spending it, and why we're spending it out of the $75 million we spend on criminal justice. I've also been working with public health, the prosecuting attorney, and the public defense on restarting our LEAD program, which is law enforcement assisted diversion, where we can take treatment-oriented 911 calls and put them to a case manager rather than to the responsibility of law enforcement. And it may be connected to that, but I'd like to expand the model of Olympia's crisis response unit and take that model countywide. These are just some of the thoughts that I've had in the wake of what we've seen in the protests and the outrage. And these are issues that I've been committed to for a long time as a criminal defense attorney that worked on seeing these things firsthand. And I hope the county will show commitment to it in response to these events. Appreciate the indulgence there. I haven't had a chance to say any of this stuff.
Well, no, you haven't. Thank you for that. But you're open to a board type statement to go out?
Absolutely.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards.
I guess I too I'm open to that myself. And Commissioner Menser brings up a lot of issues that are very important to address. I will say that I think we're ahead of schedule on addressing some of these issues. We all saw that tape of that horrendous issue back in Minneapolis, in which an officer that I might mention had about 20 prior disciplinary complaints against him, and was appeared to be directly responsible for the death of Mr. Floyd. But I will point out that we're not Wisconsin or Michigan or New York, we're Washington. And we have been doing things differently for quite a period of time. And yes, we have bad actors that get into law enforcement, just the same as there's bad actors that get into school teaching and doctors, whomever. But we don't go after the total profession when we have these bad situations that develop. We hold those individuals accountable. And I'd like the public to know that in the early 2000s, law enforcement in this region got together, a multi-agency group. I believe, if I remember, it was Thurston County, Lewis, Mason, and Grays Harbor, and the municipal jurisdictions within those jurisdictions. So whenever we had that type of an incident that developed, whether it was a life was lost or not, we brought that multi-jurisdictional investigative body together and did a complete review. Obviously, on the more serious cases, it may have went for prosecution. But yet today, that group still meets and takes these type of cases seriously. And when things, you might wonder, well, how does an officer have 20 prior disciplinary issues and he's still out there? And in fact, he's the training officer for new cadets coming on. I mean, that is absolutely crazy. I can tell you with our program here that we have regionally that Sheriff Snaza oversees for Thurston County, that can't happen because nothing can be swept under the rug, if you will, because of this review process. I believe even WASPIC, that I was president of at one point in time, throughout the state, that's the Washington Sheriffs and Chiefs Association. I believe they also have put something together very similar. So I want to point out that although there's a lot of criticism going towards law enforcement, it's a much bigger issue than law enforcement. It's a trust in government. It might be the slant of the media. And yes, it's individuals that have experienced this type of, I guess the best way I could put it is scrutiny. And I can tell you that if you walk into a bar that's predominantly black, or a bar that's gay, or a bar that's Hispanic, and you're not from that particular area, you're going to be scrutinized if you're not known by the management or the participants. And having been in those kind of situations in the past, yes, it is rather uncomfortable, and everything that we can do to alleviate that type of maybe unnecessary scrutiny, I think is a step in the right direction. But I just want to point out that we've got professionals in our law enforcement community, and I think the legislature and the governor probably need to take into consideration. I know we've got, I guess I can't comment on names, but we've got a retired chief of police looking to be a representative here representing our area in the legislature now. And I think that's beneficial when we get those kind of people to bring their ideas forward and make good decisions. But this business, when I hear about defunding the police, no, I think we need to pay attention to what's going on. I believe I heard both the president and the contender both say they weren't interested in defunding the police, but they were very much interested in incentivizing the police or enhancing training and awareness and those type of things, very similar to what Commissioner Menser has brought up. I think that we can do better always. We can always do better. And I look forward to working on some of that with my seatmates. But I hate to see any one group that has a very small number of bad actors in that group get scrutinized to the point that you talk about a morale situation. I'm sure there's one existing right now in law enforcement. So anyway, I'll just let it go.
Well, and I'll tell you the despicable and vile act in the death of Mr. Floyd is reprehensible and disgusting. And in the 3 different departments I worked for, one in Southern California and in Olympia and even Tenino, I never saw that type of activity. Policing here on the West Coast is vastly different than what we saw or what we see in the Southeast and in the Midwest and back East. And I know for a fact that we trained on it for years, that our state law, I think it was the Supreme Court that came out with the decision. I can't remember the case decision, the case name. Says excessive force, of course, begins when resistance ends. And if an officer sees or witnesses excessive force, he or she is not suggested or hinted at. You are mandated to say something. You stop the primary aggressor, the police officer, from using excessive force. You're mandated to say something. You're mandated to do something. If it doesn't, that a perpetrator of the police officer doesn't stop, you are physically to interject yourself and stop that physical force from continuing. And the third thing you're compelled to do is report it immediately to a supervisor. So you must say something, you must physically interject yourself. If that doesn't stop, saying something, and then you must immediately report it. And so it's foreign to me to see that. It's highly objectionable to see that. It casts aspersions on every police officer and law enforcement member of the community throughout the country. And he said there's no excusing it and there's no hiding behind it. But out of about 600,000 police officers in the country, it's these cases that just don't help in any way, shape, or form. So, and I'm glad you pointed out, Commissioner Menser, that the sheriff is an independently elected official responsible for his men and women and his policies and such. And the emails I've been receiving, I'm forwarding on to the sheriff so that he is aware of these emails coming in, because I don't know if he's getting them or not. And I liked that, and you, Commissioner Edwards, you talked about trust. And I thought it was really cool that Mayor Cheryl Selby was quoted in the paper that says progress moves at the speed of trust. And that is so true. We need to do what we can to start moving the ball down the road and ensuring progress is being, that we're getting some momentum by looking at our policies and practices and our commissions, our boards and such. But it's going to move at the speed of trust. And it'll take a while for our local folks to get their trust back. So I'm glad you're all three encouraged and likely to do a board letter. So if you have suggestions, perhaps, of your thoughts to give to county manager, would you collect these and kind of formulate a draft for us?
Yeah, how about the reverse? Let me come up with a draft for your consideration, and then you will add your comments.
Okay. Got pen and highlighter, we'll do it.
Mr. Chair, could I make another comment?
Yes, if you can, because we got about 6 minutes before.
Yeah, I know we don't have much time.
Plan 3 for phase 3.
I would like to point out, though, going back to the very small number of bad actors, probably with any police profession, or maybe any profession, if you think about it. I know a lot of school teachers, and yeah, I've known a couple that I didn't think too highly of, but the vast majority, 99% of them are interested in doing good. And I can tell you, from this board's perspective, I've watched Commissioner Hutchings do his job over the years. I've been involved in that over the years. I can tell you for almost 40 years, and I don't know, between us, we've probably got closer to 75 or 80 years between us. I put my life on the line anytime I was requested to intervene to benefit any citizen. I didn't ask what their gender, preference, race, whatever. I mean, you just do what you need to do, and I'm telling you, 99% of the officers out there, I feel, do exactly the same thing. I'm not going to say that same ratio. I don't know the ratio on the Eastern Seaboard, and I'm not disparaging those folks. I will say we always can do better, and we need work to do in our community. But I hate to see any group get kicked around because a very, very, very small number of folks are bad actors. And that bothers the dickens out of me, that we can have almost a 20-year veteran of a police agency in Minneapolis end up in this situation that's had 20 disciplinary actions. I can't comprehend it, so
I can't either.
I'll quit with that, I guess.
All right, thank you for that. And now we're gonna move to phase 3, moving from phase 2 to phase 3. Shelley?
Okay. You want to
Yeah.
take the lead or to open that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
Somebody take it further.
Commissioners, as you know, Thurston County is currently on phase 2 of the stay healthy, stay home mode. That's no longer in place. We're on the Safe Start plan under phase 2. And the government has stated that we need to have somewhat of a 3-week period before we can apply. So that will put us on June 17th, which is next Wednesday. So there's a couple of steps attached to your documentation is a matrix that needs to be met. And Dr. You briefly touched base this morning. Due to the time, I am not going to be walking through each of the items of the metrics, but I'm going to be concentrating on the next steps that you need to take leading to that. There are specific requirements aside from meeting the matrix of that which Dr. Yu will have to, I believe, certify whether we meet the intent of that matrix. And she needs to formally send a recommendation whether the county is ready to move into phase 3 or not. And that recommendation, one way or the other, will be coming up next week, early next week, I believe. The next step in the process is for the Board of Health to take a formal action, agreeing or not with the recommendation the Dr. Yu will provide whether Thurston County is ready to move into phase 3. As soon as the Board of Health take an affirmative action on that, the next step in the process is either the county executive to forward that plan or that recommendation and that request to the State Department of Health, the Secretary of Health. Absent the county executive, which is Thurston County, the Board of County Commissioners must take an action related to this particular request. So those are the steps that we're moving forward. I know that Shelley, Dr. You are working on the matrix just to make sure that we meet the intent of those requirements. From the administrative point of view, I have already scheduled a special meeting for the Board of Health to take place on Wednesday, in the morning of Wednesday, June 17th. Follow that, I have already scheduled a meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, assuming the Board of Health yourselves will take an affirmative action on moving to phase 3. I have already scheduled a Board of County Commissioners to take the same action following that. That will put us in the position that perhaps we be in the position to submit, if everything plays out the way it should, in the afternoon of June 17th. I'm very optimistic that we will get to that point. Very optimistic that Dr. Yu will see a way as to how she can recommend this. I am very optimistic the Board of Health would take an affirmative action to move into phase 3. I am very optimistic the Board of County Commissioners also will take an action for the county to apply to move into phase 3. I'm also extremely very optimistic the State Department of Health will give us the green light to move into phase 3 by Friday, June 19th of 2020. If all the optimism that I have plays out, the county offices will be opening for the public on Monday, June 22nd.
Commissioner Edwards, we're out of time. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make this real short. To us in government, that sounds like we're expediting. But the reality, if you own a restaurant out there, we're still not doing everything we can do. And I'm gonna ask this question because maybe it's doable, maybe not.
Go ahead and ask.
I would like to set those meeting dates so that we meet on the 16th to make sure we've done everything that we can do, take the affirmative action that we need to take, both as Board of County Commissioner and the Board of Health, And so we are ready to submit that whenever, at the earliest time we can on the 17th, because that's the date we're allowed to submit. I would like to submit earlier than that, but maybe we can't, but at least not even have that day delay of us going through the process starting on the 17th. Why can't we start the process on the 16th
Okay, because
and move forward?
as I understand it, and Dr. you will confirm that, or Shelley will, that the Board of County Commissioners, the Board of Health can't do that until the 17th. Not the day before, not a week before.
I
but
don't know the
17th.
answer. I didn't
Well,
read it that
we're
way.
gonna get it right now. Dr. Yu, go ahead, ma'am.
Shelley could probably answer that, but we cannot do anything before, we cannot submit or do anything before this. The letters and all the things that require your signature has to be on the 17th.
Dated the 17th.
Yes.
Shelley, anything further on that?
No, that's correct. The actions of the Board of Health and Board of County Commissioners, as well as Dr. Yu's recommendation, cannot be before the 17th, but we will be prepared to immediately submit the application on the 17th. I just did want to share that the Department of Health has indicated that they expect a higher volume of applications, and it's this application is a little bit more intensive than the previous application. And so they have indicated it may take them a little bit longer turnaround time to get an answer back to counties than it did the first time. So just to make you aware of that. But of course, we hope and expect that we will have a quick and positive answer. I share Ramiro's optimism.
Well, and also just for the public consumption, you have been working on this all along since we moved into phase 2. You're not waiting to the last minute. You've been working, collecting the information, doing the narrative. Go ahead, Doc.
There is the governor's office has a dashboard that actually has a list of all the metrics, and I'm monitoring that. So the citizens can also look at that. And when you look at Thurston County, we're still in the red zone for many of the metrics. But that is, part of it is due to the outbreak that we had. So where we may not look on the green side on the metrics, we can explain and provide input in the narrative. I do expect to give you a recommendation to go ahead. I will already have that available. I just won't date it until the 17th. And keep my fingers crossed, and that we're all continuing to do our very best to help each other and prevent a lot more cases from happening. But I think capacity issue, we do have that.
Okay, Ty, do you have any comments or questions?
Just a big thanks to Shelley and Dr. Yu for being on top of this. I can see from this, I can see how much more detail is involved by looking at what was passed out. So thanks for getting this all dialed up and everything you guys are doing.
Okay, Gary, 10 seconds. And I'm going to cut you off.
Okay, well, here's the deal. Why can't we at least, I think our meetings are required to be between, what, 9 and 8 or something? 9 to 5?
8 to 5.
8 to 5. Okay, could we have a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning, have our Board of Health meet, and then the Board of County Commissioners? We won't even leave, we'll continue the meeting, do both of it, get this thing signed, and get it in at least by noon or something, so we have a deadline.
Commissioner,
Good input.
That's what I'm planning to do.
Okay.
Very good input. Very good.
Good enough.
Thank you very much.
I didn't say the June 17th, 5 in the afternoon. I said in the morning.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I have all the schedule for you to take an action in the morning.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. And this meeting is adjourned, and moving on to another one now regarding funding. Go ahead, Ramiro, please.
I really need 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You have it.
Follow up, and this is very important because you're going to be dealing with some of the budget decisions coming up.
Yeah.
It is related to a public testimony that you received from a citizen in a couple letters dated May 29, 2020 and May 31st, 2020, where the citizen questioned your authority to change the budgets for elected offices, as well as your authority to eliminate vacant positions within those elected offices. So what I'm gonna be reading to you is a legal opinion by your prosecuting attorney. And it just, I'd like to address this very succinctly because you're gonna be dealing with some of the decisions coming up. The board's substantive authority begins when its responsibility and duty to, number one, manage county property and county funds. Number two, fix the amount of taxes to be assessed and collected. And number three, audit the accounts of all officers having the care, management, collection, or disbursement of any money belonging to the county or appropriate to its benefit. RCW 36.32.120, in addition, the board has a specific authority to approve and or remove deputy or employee positions and salaries of any county office. RCW 36.17.070, these statutes have been interpreted by case law and Attorney General opinions to support the board's authority to do midterm budget modifications to elected officials' budgets and modify respective employee positions. There is also a case law, Ross versus Thurston County versus King County in 1933, which also emphasizes the authority the U.S. County Commissioner has. In conclusion, the board is acting within its authority when it is considering making certain changes to the current budget in order to properly manage county finances in these challenging times.
Amen.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. That was time well spent. Thank you very much. We're moving on to a WASAC video now regarding our Zoom meeting regarding coronavirus funding, I believe.
Yes,
So
sir.
with that, we're going to adjourn this meeting and we'll see you next time.
Thank
So
you.
public hearing this afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.